So the seed of this book came from failure. My first book, the inspiration kind of came to me in a fever dream. The second book I was writing under contract. I knew that I wanted to write about Houston in the 1950s. The simple answer is that my grandfather was, he was an Italian immigrant, and he was a waiter at the Shamrock Hotel and the Court Club, it was Glenn McCarthy's hotel. He was a waiter there, and we have these family stories about how he stole a gold lighter from Glenn McCarthy, and that era really interested me. So I started writing this book, and I got about 300 pages into it, and I knew that it was about Houston, and it had a really big cast of characters, and I knew that it wasn't great, but I also was hoping that I would show it to my editor, and she would be like, no, it is great. And you just don't think it's great, but it is great. And because sometimes that can happen. And so I was actually in Nashville when I turned it into my editor before I came to Nashville to do a reading for my first book at Parnassus. And that afternoon, after I did my reading, I was driving with my mom, and I saw that I had an email from my editor, and I opened it, and I knew that it was bad because it was really long, and it started with her giving me her home number and her cell number, which is very unusual editor behavior. So, and she listed all the ways that it was wrong, and I knew that it was not good, and I'm grateful that she told me how bad it was. She's very nice and kind, but I'm grateful that she gave me all these ways that it wasn't working. But I then had to decide, do I want to write a new book entirely, or do I want to salvage something of this first book? And I didn't want to create a Frankenstein-like book where I was just like cutting and pasting and had this awkward book. So I thought about it for a long time, and the thing that was the most interesting was this friendship between these two women. And that's the thing that I couldn't let go of as a writer, and that's the thing that I wanted to write about. And I decided that I was going to dive into that and write a domestic novel, whereas before I was writing this big novel with a ton of characters. So that's kind of